So there are several things that I'd like to speak to regarding mental health, whether you have a diagnosis or not. The first is that life can be difficult, and that may sound simple, but I think many of us are experiencing that. We're all recovering from Hurricane Helene, and there are stresses of being a student or working. And then there are sort of typical life events that can still hit us very hard, like the death of a loved one, or even something smaller like a car that won't start, or an unexpected bout of COVID or another illness. So these stressors tend to pile up, and when they pile up, our mental health gets worse often. And so some people may have a diagnosis of anxiety or depression or even ADHD, and stressors can make that worse, but for any of us, stresses can make mental health worse. So I have 3 ideas I want to share with you about aiding your mental health. The first one is realistic expectations. So, and these 3 are in addition to things like eating well, getting enough sleep, exercise, and certainly getting mental health care if you need it. But these 3, I think, can be for any of us. So the first one is realistic expectations. Life is difficult, and I think if we approach it that way and sort of expect that it will not always be easy, we can avoid some of those questions like, why me? Why is this happening to me? And instead really think about that life can be difficult, that we will get through, that we can have and gain resilience as we tackle things, and that approach can actually help us by not having expectations that things will always go well. And we're living in difficult times. We could speak to the election coming, to the wars that are going on, to the natural disasters that are happening, as well as more personal issues. The second is self-compassion. This is something I teach about and I feel very strongly about. Self-compassion is this idea that I'm going to have compassion towards myself when things get difficult. Very different from kicking myself or getting down on myself or being hard on myself. And self-compassion really enables me to say, hey, I'm human. I'm a lot like everybody else who might be struggling right now or struggling at different times. And it's sort of the same approach that most of us would take to a friend. If a friend was struggling, we would probably not be hard on them. We'd probably be compassionate towards them, but we often aren't towards ourselves. So it's really thinking about how to be compassionate towards ourselves. And the last thing is, we talk a lot about self-care, and self-care is important. We all need to be taking care of ourselves on a regular basis and trying to get back to that when we're particularly stressed. But I think caring for ourselves only takes us so far. And what's even more important from my perspective is caring for each other and being cared for by each other. So really investing in relationships that will sort of take us through the hard times. One of the things that I've studied is what happens when we're in relationships that are compassionate, and all sorts of good things happen. One is we have more energy, we're more able to take action and tackle things, we have a better sense of ourselves and others, we have more compassion, not less, and we actually want more of relationships because those really help us get through. So those are some of my tips for dealing with mental health, my own and anybody else's, in addition to obviously getting the mental health care you need if you're really struggling.